gonna get this. And the Creator Spotlight coming to you from BingCon 2014, and we are wrapped up, everything is done, and we're sitting down in a church, and I'm really excited because our guest is somebody that I don't want to embarrass him by age because I'm in that same category.
I'm old.
I've admired his work for an awful long time, and finally getting to meet him is a great thing. Mr. Stephen Bissette, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I am doing well. Now, first of all, I interviewed Adam Kubert a couple weeks ago in Boston. Great guy. We'll talk about your connection with the Kuberts, but he had Mandels on as well. And it is really cool because now I'm starting to think that anybody in the Kubert clan, that's all you wear.
No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's got nothing to do with that. It's a warm summer day.
Yeah.
And sneakers would kill my feet right now.
So. I have a sore ankle, so this is all I've been wearing in my Mandels.
Oh, there you go.
That's all I've been wearing.
So.
Now, my first introduction
I mean, if I was a real cartoonist, I'd probably have Crocs, right? Or
you gotta have the Crocs.
no.
So my first introduction to your work, I mean, a lot of people remember you from the Swamp Thing and that epic run that you had there. But my run started with the superhero books. Those catalogs that came out in the 70s.
Yeah, Ivan Snyder's Superheroes World. Yeah.
To me, the internet before the internet, because you would look at them and go, I could buy all that stuff. This is crazy. Where do I get this stuff? New Jersey. That's like a world away. Back then, living in Springfield, Massachusetts as a kid, I couldn't even fathom New Jersey. It was past New York, and that was a million miles away.
And yet, you could send your money to Ivan, and he was happy to have it.
So you were in the Kubert School. You were in, a very early class.
I was in the first class. We started in September of '76. We were the pioneer class. Joe and Muriel were right there. In fact, Joe's studio was in the Baker Mansion, which at that time wasn't a dorm. That was where the classrooms were. And Joe had the big office. If you walked in the main door to the right, that was where Joe's studio and office space was. So we were the first class in the door.
Now, who were some of the guys and gals that were in your class?
Well, I bonded right off with Rick Beach.
But you guys had a great career together. You've done a lot of stuff together.
The weird thing was we were both from Vermont. We were the two guys from Vermont, and we had never met in our lives. And I was only at the Kubert School because I hadn't read many mainstream comics in my late teen years. I got into the underground comics. That's what made me want to draw comics professionally. And one of my favorite undergrounds was Two-Fisted Zombies.
Okay.
Written by Tom Beach, drawn by Rick Beach. That was Rick's debut for the mainstream, which the underground was for some of us at the time. And the indicia on Two-Fisted Zombies said if you want to write to the Beach Brothers, they were in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Well, Bellows Falls was a shithole. Yeah. I knew that. It was this little rundown Vermont town. And I thought, well, if they can do it, and I'm from Duxbury, Vermont, then I can do it, And so it was wild that Rick and I met there. Tom Yates was in our class. Tom, Rick, and I were and remain good buddies. Kara Sherman Torino, not well known. Kara passed away a number of years ago, but she had a run, ended up doing work for a number of publishers, including DC. In later classes, Ron Zalmy was in our class. In later classes, we had classmates like Tim Truman, Jan Dursema, Tom Mandre. I could go on and on and on.
And those are people that, some of the books I brought for you, I brought you A House of Mystery to sign, which you were freaking out.
Yeah, nobody ever brings that. That's I think that's the first time anyone's brought that comic.
And I try to do things like that. So as I go through my books, you're looking over going, that must have been a ton of fun because not only did you have, you were kind of studying at the feet of the master, but you were, hey, you know what, I'm editing the DC War line, so draw me some killer dolphins, which you did in the battle albums.
Yeah, but I had to prove to Joe that was true.
The dolphins?
He bought it. What can I say?
I was going to say, because, I'm reading that.
It's
even
true.
As a kid going,
it's true.
Did they really try to do that?
I found it in Wii magazine. It was true.
If it's in there, it's got to be true.
It was true. I did have to show the article to Joe, and he went, okay. That was part of the work study program that Joe and Muriel had set up, and that's what the superhero catalogs were, that we did for Ivan Snyder and Heroes World. If you were up on your assignments and proficient enough in certain paste-up mechanicals and so on, I think almost half the class ended up working on the superhero catalogs off and on. And Rick Beach and I ended up staying on it. We sort of actually packaged one of them working under Joe. And we also, before we were in Sergeant Rock, doing, like, we had to, like, you had to cut the mustard before Joe was going to let you do any pro work in Sergeant Rock comics. So we ended up doing paperbacks, the DC Comics paperbacks of Superboy, Justice League. We did all, we did the paste ups and mechanicals. We would get the photo stats from DC with the directions of how the pages had to be put together. We ended up doing a ton of different projects, and the Sergeant Rock backup stories and battle albums were part of that, if you proved to Joe that you were of professional quality, that it would fit.
And that is amazing, because that's not everybody gets that opportunity.
And, of course not. I mean, I never had that. If I hadn't gone to Kubert School, we wouldn't be talking right now. That's what got my foot in the door, and it was a 2-year crash course. And being from New England, I mean, it put me in proximity to New York City. I was out looking for work before I was done with my first year. I lucked out. I sold my first piece to heavy metal. I hadn't finished my my first year of the 2-year program. I was selling work to Marvel, as was Tom Yates, and Joe Kubert also, as part of the work study program. I did a story for Scholastic magazines that turned into an ongoing contract that Joe actually awarded to me after graduation, like, so I could carry on working with them.
Wow.
So it was a real, I mean, it was a real trade school in that regard. I mean, if you were determined and you were really going to push yourself and could make the deadlines, which at that time I could, you know, it was a real trade school.
And it's interesting because we talked a little bit about the superhero book, which was, if you don't know what it was a catalog that came out that was full of all the Marvel DC toys of the time from this store in New Jersey.
Yeah, and they ended up playing a key role in Marvel's history. I mean, that was the place that Marvel chose as their only distributor during the direct sale market implosion. Well, actually kicked off the direct sale market implosion. And Ivan ended up skipping the country, as I recall. But I won't go into that.
And you got paid a hefty price for doing some of this work.
$5.
I love that. I mean, and you know what?
And that wasn't Joe. That was Ivan. I don't want anybody thinking Joe was doing that kind of mule work on us, but Ivan did.
And you know, going back to 1976, 77, $5 was pretty much what $5 is right now.
Yeah. What do you want me to say about that? You know, but we were paid page rates for the rock stuff. We were paid page rates or project rates for the block projects we were working on. The superhero catalog was an exception, not a rule.
There we go. Now, I mentioned earlier that I interviewed Adam Kubert a couple of weeks ago, and you know, you saw him and Andy when they were young kids walking around the studio.
Not only that, Adam was in high school at the time. Andy was a really young guy, and Adam ended up going to medical illustration college. He was not going to pursue cartooning. When he graduated high school, he went, I don't know if he did 1 or 2 years, but he went for medical illustration and ended up coming back and deciding to take his classes at his father's school. And I can only imagine. Joe was a tough taskmaster with us. I can't imagine what it was like for Adam or Andy. But I have to add, and a lot of people don't know this, I mean, Adam and Andy were trained letterers. They were lettering stuff for Joe while they were in high school, is my memory. And if I'm wrong about that, Adam.
They were, because they were doing the Sergeant Rock books and stuff like that. Right.
So, you know, they already had the discipline. But the fact that they chose to participate in the school as students, graduate, and go on to have the careers they've got is just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Joe Kubert fan, obviously from what I was reading as a kid, and when I got and sat and chatted with Andy, and you know, Joe hasn't been gone that long, and you could see that it was really tough, you know, with Adam when he saw that his father signed a book, and I'm wondering what your memories are of Joe, because I cried when I found out, and it's still a little bit of a shock to me.
Joe was like a second father, not just to me, but to many of us. Rick Beach, Joe and Muriel were a godsend for many of us, and it was hard when Muriel passed a couple of years ago, and with Joe going last year, that was hard. Rick and his family and I did go to the funeral, and yeah, it was hard. I still and feeling it.
Yeah.
No two ways about it.
And all I'll say is the years that you've been drawing and seeing you doing some sketches today and picking up your 1941 book, which I cannot wait to dive into because
That's a weird
great
book.
movie and I love the story. I've already flipped through it going, yeah, I see where Spielberg might have had a little problem.
Yeah,
with
he
some of
wasn't too
this.
happy with it. I don't know what they were expecting, but they weren't expecting that. That's
No.
all I can say. Heavy Metal was happy with it.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't have published it if they hadn't been.
That's right up their alley. But it's nice to know that with you and with all the guys and gals that you went to school with, that Joe's legacy is still living, and you still can see a little bit of flair of his art style in all of your work. And to me, I love that.
Joe's the man to put a brush in my hand.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget the night at Kubert School. It was probably the first month. It was within the first 4 or 5 weeks of the school that we were doing brushwork, and I took to it like immediately. It was like the tool I've been looking for all my life. And Joe coming up behind me and going, "You're taking to this like a duck to water," and you know, yeah. And I really grew up loving that school of cartooning. I mean, the big three for me were Sam Glanzman, and Sam is still alive. Sam, I believe, is 89 this year.
Living upstate New York, I think.
Upstate New York, and Dover Publications is about to reprint A Sailor's Story, the graphic novel he had done for Marvel. That was one of the Marvel graphic novels. So Sam is still very much, and he was part of Joe's circle.
Yep.
I mean, Joe ran the USS Stevens backup stories.
Amazing stuff right there.
But the big three for me, as a kid growing up, the artists I imitated were Sam Glanzman, Joe Kubert, and Greg Irons, and they were three of the brush masters. You know, they're all of them are very different, but they have a real organic brush, pen and ink brush style, and yeah, it's definitely the work.
Yeah.
Not only can I not hide it, I'm proud of it.
Yeah,
so,
and that's the best part. So we know we've got to leave. You've got to ride home ahead of you. I can smell Taco Bell from here. The roadies have already loaded
You think
up
I'm going to
everything.
Taco Bell on the way home?
Tell you what,
Forget
you're
about
invited.
it.
We'll treat.
It's
we'll
okay.
treat.
I appreciate that, but.
So where can people find out more about you other than driving up and stalking you at your house?
I'm in my 9th year teaching at the Center for Cartoon Studies up in White River Junction, Vermont. Go online to www.cartoonstudies.org. Most of the public events that I do are associated with the school. I know it's a haul for people, but you want to see me, you got to get your sorry ass up to White River Junction. And I also have my own website, which is srbissette.com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm very visible on Facebook. Come find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time. I know
My great pleasure. And good luck with the podcast. Hope to do this again sometime.
Yeah, we definitely will chat again. I want to make it up and check out your students and see the legacy of Joe carried on with these guys.
Well, also, I mean, the Center for Cartoon Studies is a whole different community than we had at the Kubert School, and it's very much, yes, the same tradition. I mean, James Sturm, co-founder of the Center for Cartoon Studies, said to me when Joe passed away, he said, you know, "Steve, don't kid yourself. You honor Joe every time you walk in that classroom," and that's true. But James and Jason Lutz, who's a fellow faculty member, John Chad, I mean, they're coming from the generation that was shaped by Raw and Fantagraphics, Love and Rockets, and it's a whole new thing. I mean, comics have changed so much, and it does feel organically like a different creative community. So. They complement one another in many ways, but it's very different. Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, well, thank you again for the time and continued success, and thank you again for the memories of your work.
Enjoy.
Thank you, and so much in another Creator Spotlight. So on behalf of our guest, Mr. Stephen R. Bissette, this is the Matman. Have yourself a good one till we talk again soon.
Oh, this.